Welcome to Crescent City Crime, dear listeners. I'm Tracy.
And I'm Brian.
Thank you to everybody who is either been listening to us. Welcome back. And if you are new, welcome.
Welcome, listeners. We really enjoy talking to you.
We really do. And this week we have a lot to say, but first, make sure that you are subscribed to us on your preferred podcasting platform. We are also on the YouTube. That's right, the YouTube. And of course, any ratings, reviews, comments, whatever you can do to help drive the algorithm, because we're all slaves to the algorithm these days, right?
Right. And if you're streaming us on YouTube, it's perfectly safe to do so while you're driving in your car because there's no real video to watch.
There is no real video to watch. There is a screenshot that says Crescent City Crime on it. Well, I say screenshot. I mean, like it's just a picture of our logo that says Crescent City Crime. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only thing on our channel that you may want to actually watch when you're watching them is David Ford's reports from the fields.
Yes.
It's he works for little to nothing. We're trying to help him, get his career back on track. Essentially, he got fired from BBC World Service.
Yeah, and recently I've heard that he was taken away by a pack of wild coyotes in City Park.
No, he probably got away.
I hope so.
I mean, he always seems to make his escape.
Well, we will see soon enough if David Ford lives, huh?
Yes.
So before we get to the episode proper, we are going to share some updates. I'm sure that, like myself, like many other true crime aficionados, we've all been having eyes on Long Island right now. We've all been paying attention to Rex. I found out it's not Heuermann, it's Hoyerman. That's how you pronounce his name. On Rex Hoyerman's home. His wife has rightfully divorced him already. She's getting out of there. I don't blame her. I always do think about the family members of the person like this. They have family members, they have wives, they have children. It has happened, and this must just be devastating.
The family members in this case are also victims. And this is very different from the average criminal who goes to jail, whose family, still loves him or her. They just don't love what the person did to get into trouble. And they want to visit with the person when they can, write letters, talk on the phone when they can. This is very, very different,
Not even Tammy Wynette would stand by this man.
No way in hell. No way in hell. I mean, all of a sudden, you just have such a rude awakening to all of a sudden find out this man you were married to is not really who you thought he was all these years at all.
But also consider the fact that he was probably terrible to her. I don't think he was a nice person to live with. I don't think she knew exactly what he was up to. But, this is a person who just doesn't care about anybody but himself. So, like I said, I imagine that being married to him was not pleasant. I hope that wherever she winds up, I hope that she finds some kind of peace. I hope she can make a new life for herself.
Yeah, she's due for a moratorium
on bad people in her life.
She's probably due for a moratorium, period.
Yeah. Yes. So, under New York state law, Rex Hoyerman's DNA can be accessed for crimes that he's suspected of committing, but it cannot be uploaded to CODIS until he is actually convicted of a crime. I know that some people, they were upset about this, but consider the fact that this is actually a good law. I mean, because your DNA is so unique to you personally. I mean, imagine if anybody could, if law enforcement could just come to your house at any time and demand a DNA sample from you. That's what this law prevents, essentially.
Yeah, well, the government has a DNA sample on me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
So,
they it was taken when I was still in the Marine Corps.
oh, well, I was just a person who wanted to know more about my genetics, so Ancestry.com for me, baby.
Yeah, the Marine Corps didn't do it for that purpose. They just took the samples off and did whatever.
They shipped it off to Area 51 where they're going to create a big, gigantic supermarine.
Oh no. Kind of like, you mean to tell me like that they're going to create, they're going to take the genetics from the greatest Marines who ever lived, myself included, I'm being modest of course, and create someone like Serpentor on GI Joe?
Yes, that's their plan.
God help us all.
The Suffolk District Attorney Ray Tierney is going to prosecute the case himself. A suspect cannot accept a plea deal unless the district attorney offers one. Okay, I want everybody to keep that in mind. So if you're saying, why isn't he taking a plea deal? That's why, because the prosecution has to offer one. The state has to offer a plea deal for a for a suspect to accept it.
And on that level, the district attorney
Himself, yes.
would have to approve of it.
Exactly.
In the first place. And we're talking about a public official. And me personally, I seriously doubt that the average district attorney would want to do a plea deal on a case of this magnitude, given that he or she would like to, run for re-election.
Yes, very much so. Because remember that district attorneys are politicians at their core. They do run for office. They do get elected. But there is a possibility that this case will go to trial. But there's also a probability that the suspect will change his plea to guilty. And that's why the district attorney himself is trying to prosecute this. It is this would be the easiest, most high-profile case you could land if Rex Hoyerman does decide to change his plea.
And I could completely see, I can totally see, for example, if I was the district attorney in this situation, I would very likely say, no deals. You're pleading out. Or we go to trial.
Right.
Okay? Because the district attorney in this situation can well afford to take that kind of hard-line position.
Yeah. He can. And I know that this is a case that has haunted Long Island for a long time. Understandably, they want to see it finished. I completely feel that. I really do. And I do hope that the wheels of justice will turn quickly. And that I do hope that they've actually caught the person. I am 99% sure that they did get the right guy. But the thing is that you never really know until it's over with. I mean, like we've talked about before, there have been cases where the public is convinced it's a slam dunk. OJ did it. Casey Anthony killed her daughter. And what happened in both of those cases?
They're probably going to come up with a mountain of evidence here.
Speaking of which,
what appears to be, so the district attorney has plenty of time to let this unfold.
Yes, and speaking of which, even though investigators have spent pretty much the past week digging up the yard of the house, no human remains were found buried in the yard. But law enforcement confirmed that they collected a lot of items they view as significant, and they are submitting them for analysis. They have not said what this is because they can't release this information to the public before they release it to defense attorneys. It's a process called discovery of evidence. Okay.
I'm thinking it's very likely that this evidence recovered are personal effects of victims that he decided to keep. So, as
Yeah.
many of these items as possible that can be linked to the victims will, will further this case.
There's also things like carpet fibers, hairs. There could even be blood spatter DNA somewhere in this house. I mean, I just want to point out that a lot of true crime aficionados know it is not so easy to clean blood away. All right? And I'm just going to say this, men are not always well known for cleaning.
Yes, unless they have genuine OCP.
OCD.
OCD.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, no. Well, maybe it could be OCP.
What's OCP?
Because OCP runs the cops.
What?
Omni Consumer Products.
Oh, ha. Okay.
RoboCop.
That's it. No more sanctions for you.
You've crossed my line of death.
Now, properties associated with Rex Hoyerman in other states are also being investigated. He's connected to North Carolina. He's connected to Nevada. Likely even connected to New Jersey, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Okay, so it is possible that he has killed in multiple states, and if that's the case, then he can be charged federally, and he might be sentenced to death in the federal system. But also, we're not going to know anything for a while. I get the feeling that this is going to take a long time before we see any kind of real conclusion to this. Because all of a sudden, this has turned into something with multiple moving parts. Multiple branches of law enforcement involved. Numerous crime labs have to get through all their evidence at the same time. More investigations happening. It feels pretty surreal.
Yes, it almost feels like a television show.
Yes, and I would rather this be a television show than be real life, but
it's easier to sit through this type of thing in a television show because it's not real.
Right.
And of course, it's even more intriguing to be on the set of one of these things where they're being filmed because, well, once again, it's not real and you're seeing what is real,
Exactly. Now, also, just to change gears a little bit, the attorneys for Brian Kohberger, he's the man accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students last fall. They claim that Brian was not at the location where the crimes took place.
I wasn't.
Your last name's not Kohberger either.
I know. But you just said Brian.
Well, his name is spelled with a Y, yours is spelled with an I, so.
Aha.
Aha.
I definitely wasn't there then.
No, you definitely were not. But they have not yet provided evidence or an alibi that does not that proves that Brian Kohberger was not in the house that night. Investigators say that DNA matching Kohberger's was found on the sheath of a K-bar knife that was recovered from the house, but the weapon itself has not been recovered. They do believe that it was a K-bar knife that was used to kill those four students.
Specifically a K-bar.
Specifically a K-bar, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, Marine Corps issue going back to World War II. K-bar is a style of a Bowie knife, essentially. The Bowie knife is a traditional hunting knife that has a wide blade, okay, and a little thick, okay, and it's going to have what's called a blood cut in it, which is like a channel in the middle of the blade to let blood flow into it if you have to use it to defend yourself, so that you can quickly, because when the blood flows into the blood cut, you can pull it out of the person you've had to stab much faster. That's why it's called a blood cut or blood relief cut. But the Marine Corps uses K-bars to this day. Last I remember when I was in, you go to war, the armory's issuing rifles to sergeants and below, rank and a bayonet, and issuing pistols to staff sergeant and above into the officer ranks and a K-bar. That was the procedure the last time.
Right.
But of course, young Marines could buy their own K-bars.
Well, I think anybody can buy one, right?
Yeah. You could go to it could be a place like Cabela's. They sell them, or you could order them online. You could get them directly from Camillus. Yeah, Camillus is the knife company that currently manufactures the official Marine Corps K-bar knife, and it's a weapon of war. So be careful. Just kidding.
No, really, be careful with the K-bar knife, for real.
Oh yes, and there in various references that involve like references to street fighting. Okay, it's funny. Like the K-bar fighting knife is a top recommendation because they can be found for under $100, and they're rugged and they work.
So let's take advantage of your knowledge on the subject here. Would you say, and I would like you to look at this from an analytical viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that in this instance that we're talking about here, Brian Kohberger killed 4 people in his house, right? Using this weapon, would you say that he could have chose this weapon because it could kill people faster?
It's quite possible he chose this particular style of Bowie knife, okay, for the same reason some mass shooters will choose the AR-15 rifle, because it's portrayed and romanticized as something used by the military.
Oh, okay.
But for the K-bar knife, it really goes deeper than that. It's a legendary knife that is known as an awesome hunting knife, field knife, even a self-defense knife. Okay, which means yes, it can make a very deep and wide stab wound in an animal or a person. And like if you get the one that has the serrated blade further up, it's even more effective.
Right.
You notice, whereas you have the narrow, sharp blade at the top and a serration along the back, for example, if you go for a slash of the jugular veins and carotid arteries in the neck, okay, the serrated part can really help you make sure that you've cut deep enough.
Right.
When you're cutting like that, in which case you hold this K-bar knife to where the back of the blade, the dull end of the blade, runs parallel to your wrist and forearm. Okay, and this is how a typical Marine is taught to hold it in a knife fight, because it allows you to use the blade to block someone and cut them as you block them. Okay, and it also allows you to do a very swift slash of the throat, jugular veins and carotid arteries. Okay. And pull the blade out quickly too, because what you're doing is you're running your forearm and your wrist along the neck as you're holding the blade.
Right.
And it's very effective, and it's difficult to guard against, because the person's very likely unable to grab the knife or grab the hilt.
Well, there was evidence. It did not say which of the victims, but it said that at least one of the victims fought back. So they did try, or one of them did try to defend themselves against this this horrible attack.
And in that situation, there's essentially 2 reasons to fight back. One, it's your only chance, essentially, in that situation. And 2, you're creating evidence for the investigators.
Right.
If you fail, you're creating evidence for them, because
true.
your blood is going to the blood of the assailants, and your blood as well, is going to get in various places.
Well, I don't.
You'll get your blood in the murder weapon, okay, so that it'll be easier to link the murder weapon to the victim.
Well, they haven't found the murder weapon. I mean, let's be fair. Like, it's could be quite easy to dispose of a knife. You throw it in a river, throw it in a dumpster somewhere. It's not a difficult weapon to dispose of. If they haven't found it, they probably never will.
And it quite possibly left other evidence too.
Well, yes, like for example,
the blood's going to get in other places.
The blood's going to get in other places. I believe that also when Brian Kohberger was arrested, I believe that one of the things that the police looked for, because from what had happened was law enforcement figured out that the vehicle that he was driving, okay, so they started to look for this vehicle, and they said that whoever was driving the vehicle, you need to see if they might have defensive wounds on their arms.
Which is very typical defending against a knife. When you're taught knife defense in the Marine Corps, you're told to expect slashes, even if you successfully defend against a knife. Expect to get cut on your forearms,
right,
your hands, okay? You're going to get those kinds of defensive wounds, okay? Because part of knife defense is actually accepting slashes to your forearms in the process.
Well, and prosecutors and defense attorneys are still arguing over whether or not the DNA found on the K-bar sheath was planted there or not. Which, who would even do that? I mean, come on.
Grasping at straws with the defense.
Yeah, I think so too. But again, we are just going to have to wait until the trial, which is going to happen. This is going to trial. We do know that for sure. And all I can say is, once again, I hope that law enforcement has caught the right person.
I mean,
I really do.
Good luck. I mean, good luck coming up with a reason why someone, some seemingly random person with no claim to fame, would have evidence planted to implicate them.
Yeah, well,
someone the investigators have no connection to at all.
Right. Well, also, I mean, it could be, so and so really did it. Maybe they had something out. Maybe they had something against Brian Kohberger and tried to frame him for it. That's a possibility. I'm just speculating. Nobody has said anything official.
I would say it's doubtful, but grasping at straws again. There was a time when, going back to my brief stint in law enforcement, for this particular drug bust, all I was doing was working the perimeter as a uniform on the scene, making sure no one comes in who's not supposed to be there, and I get subpoenaed for the the trial of these bozos. And essentially all I went there to do is just basically tell the attorneys questioning me or cross questioning me, okay, that I didn't know anything, essentially. And I was accused of planting the marijuana. I wasn't the only one accused either. It was like the defense attorney just made the rounds of accusing every police officer who was called to testify of planting the marijuana. And essentially, it was my role to just keep my head and professionally answer yes or no, and essentially answer no to every question I was asked, except for the first one is, were you there? Were you there? Yes. And then ask, well, what were you doing there? And to say I was working the perimeter, just simply making sure no one unauthorized comes in, enters the crime scene. And that was basically it, So, and, I just had to keep my head, even though that this desperate defense attorney was accusing me of planting weed. Which is, I mean, of course, it's laughable, I had never even been to that address in my whole life, except for when I had to work the perimeter at the scene.
You know who else would say that? A criminal.
Oh, two sides of the same coin, the cops and the criminals, right? They both start with the letter C.
Well, sometimes cops and criminals are two sides of the same coin. We've talked about it on this podcast
Mm-hmm.
before. Mm-hmm.
We sure have.
Sure have. All right. So today, though, now it is time to get into the episode proper. That was all the updates that I have on the big current cases that seems to be on the minds and lips of everybody who has an interest in these things. Uh, Again, Brian Koberger's case is going to go to trial pretty soon, and the next court date for Rex Hoyerman is still August 1st. That's in about a week, actually. Yeah, it's in about a week. So I'm pretty sure that there will be more evidence released to the public at that time, and I know that that's something that many of us are really want to know, including myself. I want to know more.
Yes, I sure do.
Yeah.
But just one more brief thing about knives. Another good choice, and that can be found pretty affordable price, is the Cold Steel brand Tanto, made in Japan. Although the Tanto was engineered to specifically for penetration, different design than the K-bar. Kind of like some people would describe it as like a ninja dagger.
Is it like a Hattori Hanzo sword?
No, but you could get a custom Tanto dagger made of similar quality. It depends on how much money you want to spend. Whether or not you want a production knife or something that is genuinely handmade. I only have a small collection of production knives.
All right, and we are not sponsored by Tanto or K-Bar.
No.
But if they come knocking, I wouldn't say no either.
We're not sponsored by Benchmade either, and I own a couple of their nice production line knives.
So today we're going to talk about the life and career of David C. Hennessey. He was a prominent figure in the history of law enforcement in New Orleans. He was born to Margaret and David Hennessey Sr., which will surprise nobody that he was born into an Irish Catholic family. And Hennessey's journey was filled with a lot of twists and turns. His father was a member of the 1st Louisiana Cavalry of the Union Army during the Civil War. He fought valiantly after the state was occupied by the Union troops. And then following the war, during the Reconstruction era, he served with the Metropolitan Police, which was a New Orleans force that operated under the authority of the governor of Louisiana. Metropolitan Police were often perceived by local white Democrats as a military occupation army, but they defended the voting rights of freedmen, and this was in accordance with the 15th Amendment. But tragically, David Sr.'s life was cut short in 1869 when he was murdered by Arthur Garrion, a fellow policeman.
Oh, wow! I was unaware of that.
No, there's always something new to learn in history. Now, despite the adversity that young David Hennessey, son, faced, he joined the New Orleans police force as a messenger in 1870, and it was during this time that his potential began to shine. While he was just a teenager, he apprehended 2 adult thieves in an act of robbery, and he confronted them with nothing but his bare hands before escorting them to the police station.
Okay. Very, very, very interesting. By today's standards, that would be like a cadet at the police academy who's directing traffic, okay, and unarmed for a special event, which is happening, quite often these days for every special event. They bring police recruits to set up roadblocks for streets that are closed off for the special events that become pedestrian only in a quarter, or even direct traffic, okay? And directing traffic is something that can be easily taught, okay?
Right.
Apprehending someone unarmed, it's kind of the equivalent to that.
Well, his bravery did not go unnoticed, and at the young age of 20, he earned the rank of detective.
That is that wouldn't happen today.
Now, it was also a different time. I don't.
Right.
I mean, it's different now. You have to have more experience to be a detective.
Oh yeah, much has changed. In some ways, things were simpler then. But back then, you had to work harder to apprehend people, given that they were just not as many tools available then as there are now.
In 1881, David Hennessey teamed up with his cousin Michael, a skilled private detective named James Mooney, and John Bolin from New York City, where they successfully apprehended the notorious Italian bandit and fugitive Gillespie Esposito. Gillespie Esposito. Doggone it. Gillespie Esposito. There it is. I finally pronounced it right.
Pretty close to the initials of Giancarlo Esposito. Right?
Yeah. We love you, Giancarlo Esposito.
Oh, we certainly do. Yes. Coming soon, the TV show Parish to probably streamable on Hulu. Giancarlo Esposito television show called Parish, and I'm in a scene with Giancarlo Esposito in the show. Well, I guess we'll save that story for another time. I got to meet him and everything, got an autograph.
Okay.
Story for another time.
Well, this Esposito, the bad Esposito, okay,
yeah.
He was
in real life.
Yes,
a real life bad guy with the same last name.
He was wanted in Italy for kidnapping a British tourist, and he committed various other crimes. And after he was captured, he was deported to Italy, where he faced a life sentence for his misdeeds. So, at that time, it probably was not as easy to track down somebody like this. Not like in modern times.
No, it certainly wasn't.
You didn't have surveillance cameras, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have GPS, you didn't have a way to track people. There was no social media footprint.
The wanted poster would have an artist sketch of you.
It would have an artist sketch. That is exactly right. Yes. Then in 1882, a significant trial unfolded as Hennessey found himself accused of the murder of New Orleans Chief of Detectives Thomas Devereaux. At the time, both men were vying for the position of chief. Hennessey argued self-defense, and after a closely watched trial, he was ultimately found not guilty. The verdict allowed him to move forward, and he left the department shortly thereafter to join a private security firm, which was endowed with police powers by the city. So, you can argue whether or not he actually killed Thomas Devereaux, but he was found not guilty.
Yes, and apparently this business of endowing a private security firm with police powers, that of course it eventually came to an end, but there is still to this day a remnant of that. Okay, believe it or not, as there are certain, like say, private investigators or private security guards to work in Orleans Parish. You have to have a permit to carry a gun that you get at the police headquarters around Tulane, close to Tulane and Broad Street. And there are also other, like for example, grounds patrol officers for the city of New Orleans, which are essentially New Orleans security guards, which operate under the authority of the New Orleans Police Department, have to get those permits. So it seems like the remnants of that is that permit and the what's called grounds patrol officers.
Right.
Yeah, or basically Orleans Parish security guards, who are not quite police, but they're security guards under the authority of the New Orleans Police Department.
Well, at the time, so this was in 1884, 1885. David Hennessey was entrusted with handling security for the New Orleans World Fair of those years.
Yeah, the first World Fair took place in New Orleans 100 years before the 1994 World's Fair.
Yes. The New York Times took note, commending Hennessey's men as being neatly uniformed and a fine-looking and intelligent body of men far superior to the regular city force.
That's understandable that they had someone who had police experience get to handpick his men at the time, and of course they were all men, and train them to his standards. So it's not surprising, given that he was elite at the time as a police officer.
Well, also at this time, this made his career pretty much. He did this, showed his capabilities, and this established him as a figure in the realm of law enforcement that was, somebody who was contendable. He was on top of his game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It would take longer to do something similar these days with any police department.
In 1888, Joseph A. Shakespeare, no relation, I don't think. He was a mayoral candidate supported by the Young Men's Democratic Association, and they pledged to address the police inefficiency. Shakespeare wasted no time in appointing Hennessey as the new police chief of New Orleans. So Hennessey went from the police force to private security to being chief of police.
Yeah, that's quite a fast track career. It's the kind of thing that only happened in the proverbial good old days.
Well, would it surprise you to know that when Hennessey became chief, that he inherited a New Orleans police force that was plagued by incompetence and corruption?
That's not a great surprise. No, because the NOPD would go through a variety of evolutions of different types of corruptions. Of course, like the one that seems to have had the most lasting effects on the current department. Right. Although much of it's gone, so yes, some of the influence is still there when the mafia ran the New Orleans Police Department, 1950s, 60s, and had influence on the NOPD during the 70s.
Well, with Hennessey's leadership, the department did show signs of improvement. But like all decent politicians in the city of New Orleans, bad things tend to happen to the good politicians in the city, or the good police in the city, or whatever you want to call them. On October the 15th of 1890, he was ambushed and shot by several gunmen as he made his way home from work. The weapons used were believed to be a sawed-off shotgun, which is also commonly known as a lupara. Have you ever heard that term associated with the sawed-off shotgun?
I have. Okay. Now let's get one thing straight about the sawed-off shotgun, folks. Okay, the shorter the length of a shotgun, the wider the spread is for the ball bearings. Okay, essentially.
But don't you also have to be closer?
Yes. So when you're using a shotgun for self-defense purposes, we're going to go with that, okay? You want a tight spread. You don't want a wide spread. So the shorter the barrel in a shotgun, the less distance any of these shotgun pellets will travel, and they will spread more and also have less power behind them as well, okay? So a sawed-off shotgun is a point-blank weapon.
And people
to even be effective, and the reason for sawing
is for concealability, right?
Concealment. That's it. That's the only reason to saw the barrel of a shotgun, which is a federal crime, by the way, these days.
Don't do it.
Now you can legally purchase a pistol version of a shotgun. It's going to be very, very short, okay, and ballistically not that effective, okay, because it has a short barrel on it, okay. So those of you who harbor this belief that you increase the effectiveness of let's say a 12 gauge shotgun by sawing the barrel off, as a handful of rappers seem to believe, as evidenced by a variety of these gangster raps. Okay, no, it's not more effective. Okay, now is it going to look badass because it's short and concealable? Yes, but tactically speaking, pretty ineffective. And as far as your very, very short barrel shotguns, there's not enough room for a long feed tube, so also that's less rounds of ammunition as well. Like the smallest pump action shotgun pistols are going to only hold 3 rounds, because your feed tube has got to be shorter along with the barrel.
So at this time, though, the sawed-off shotguns were frequently employed by the mafia as a means of execution.
Oh, yeah, point blank. Point blank,
right.
It's going to be very effective. You point it straight at the person's head, it's going to work like a charm, and it's going to blow the person's head to pieces.
Well,
and these were probably typically hunting shotguns that are single barrel or double barrels. You load just 1 round at a time. So you can cut that barrel really short because there's no feed tube involved. But because it's a single barrel hunting shotgun or double barrel, you have to reload after shooting it once.
Well, Hennessey did fight back. He returned fire and even pursued his assailants before he ultimately succumbed to his wounds. In his final moments, Hennessey managed to utter a significant clue to Captain William O'Connor, whispering the word "Dagos."
Ah, yes, the good old derogatory term for Italians and Sicilians.
Right.
That's been uttered in the streets of New Orleans for, by now, hundreds of years. Yeah. Although not so much today.
No.
Yeah.
Well, now Hennessey did remain conscious for several hours after the shooting. He refrained from naming his attackers, even though he spoke with friends at the hospital. And then the following day, he died from complications arising from his injuries. And he was laid to rest in the Metairie Cemetery, which marked the end of his life dedicated to law enforcement. And at this time, so just to give some more context, okay, the backdrop to this assassination, at this time there was an ongoing feud between two prominent New Orleans families, the Provenzanos and the Montrangas.
Sicilian families, no doubt.
I guess.
Yeah.
They were fierce rivals in the New Orleans waterfront business scene, which, New Orleans is a port city. Yes, there's going to be competition for those who get the shipping contracts.
Oh, yes, and smuggling, of course, is very much tied to shipping. And if you control a dock, okay, that means you can pretty much smuggle whatever you want into that dock.
That's exactly right.
Yes, of course. So naturally, organized crime families very much wanted to control docks. Yeah.
Well, Hennessey played a crucial role in sending several Provenzanos to prison. Their appeal trial was approaching, and speculation arose that Hennessey had intended to present new evidence during the trial that would exonerate the Provenzanos while implicating the Montrangas. This theory suggested that the motive for his murder lay with the Montragas rather than the Provenzanos. But conflicting accounts emerged. A police officer and a friend of Hennessey's testified the chief had never mentioned such plans. So again, just speculation. No actual fact right there. But public sentiment overwhelmingly pointed towards the involvement of Italian people in Hennessey's assassination. Local newspapers, including the Times Democrat and the Daily Picayune, openly attributed the murder to Dagos. Numerous newspaper articles of that...
That's in quotations, by the way.
Yes, it is. That's not my words.
Yeah, not our words. Yeah.
Numerous newspaper articles of that era also drew connections between Hennessey's murder, Esposito, and the Mafia, which further fueled the speculation and intrigue surrounding the case. In the aftermath of Hennessey's assassination, the city of New Orleans was engulfed in a fervor to bring the killers to justice. The police force responded by apprehending numerous local Italians, and this led to the arrest of dozens of individuals. Ultimately, 19 men were indicted for the murder and detained without bail in the Orleans Parish Prison. But the trial took place in March, and this resulted in a series of acquittals and mistrials, much to the disappointment and anger of the local community. The frustration reached a boiling point when an enraged mob, consisting of a large number of people, converged outside the prison. The crowd forcefully breached the prison doors, and in a horrific act of vigilantism, they lynched 11 of the accused men.
And the odds are pretty good that somebody was innocent.
Yes, very good odds that somebody was innocent of those 11 people. We will never know, unfortunately. Now, after this, the response from city officials was a mix of condemnation and justification. Police superintendent at the time, his name was Parkerson. He was overwhelmed by the violence. He addressed the crowd, expressing the emotional toll it had taken on him. He implored the mob to disperse, stating, "I have performed the most painful duty of my life today. Now let us go home, and God bless you and our community." Mayor Shakespeare, when questioned about his thoughts on the mob taking over the role of the courts, responded resolutely, "I am an American citizen, and I am not afraid of the devil. These men deserved killing, and they were punished by peaceful, law-abiding citizens. The accused took the law into their own hands, and we were forced to do the same." So two different sides here. One side not wanting to see any more violence, and the other side just not caring if you see any more violence.
And that's a typical politician trying to please the crowd and tell certain constituency what they want to hear. I mean, except back then, it seemed that a mayor could do that,
right,
and just get away with it because of a public bias at the time.
In the aftermath, the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce extended its congratulations to the citizens of New Orleans for restoring order, which reflected the sentiment that viewed the actions of the mob as necessary to maintain peace and justice. But it should be noted that this viewpoint was not universally shared. Criticism and concern were voiced by many who questioned the disregard for due process and the rule of law, and I have to say, I agree with those people.
Yes, it is horrific to look back and see elements of the media and even the mayor himself condone mob justice. It's true. It's truly horrific, and mob justice is a perfect way to violate the Constitution and murder innocent people.
Oh, you mean like what could have happened on January 6th? That would have been mob justice if they would have gotten to politicians and did what they wanted to them. That was mob rule. That would have been mob justice. and that's not a good thing to do.
No, no, not at all.
But that's a different discussion, I know.
Yeah, it's a different discussion, and I'm just going to say one thing here. If security forces, United States Marine Corps, who elements of which are at the White House and at every State Department embassy, pretty much, among other places, if would have been responsible for security at the Capitol itself, that wouldn't have happened.
No.
The Marine security forces would not have let that go down. Probably wouldn't have even been tried.
Yeah, you might be right, because a lot of those people, they it's a term I've used with you before called tactical, where they just want to hang around with and pose with their guns and their tactical gear and look cool, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. Well, the types of Marine Corps infantry who get into security, what's called security forces, okay, their recruiting post are Marines. Tall, muscular, fierce, excellent in every aspect of the job of being a Marine Corps infantryman or rifleman, as we call them. And one of these Marines is capable of intimidating almost anyone just by looking at them. Okay, these tactical fools, tactifools. Okay,
tactifools. I like that. Yeah. Yes.
Would have probably turned around and walked the other way if even Marine Corps security forces types would have even looked at them. Okay, these are some These Marines are intimidating as far as Marines go.
And also, I don't think that there's much courage in being part of a mob.
No, there isn't. Nope.
So on May the 6th, a grand jury took action by indicting Detective O'Malley and several others, including 2 jurors, for obstructing justice in relation to the acquittal of the accused Italians. The grand jury deliberated evidence related to the lynch mob, but ultimately praised Parkerson and other leaders involved in managing the situation. Now, this event not only shocked the city, but it also strained relations between the United States and Italy for a period of time. A resolution was reached with a cash indemnity offered to settle the matter. So it caused an international incident.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
The press coverage that surrounded Hennessey's assassination and the subsequent lynching was very much sensationalized, and it exhibited a strongly anti-Italian sentiment. The journalistic standards of that era differ significantly from our contemporary worldview. The assumption that the lynched men were mafia assassins who deserved their fate was almost universally accepted. But in recent times, many historians have challenged this assumption and has prompted a reevaluation of the events and the individuals involved. Interestingly enough, in a separate incident related to the aftermath of the Hennessey murder trial on November the 24th of 1893, an African-American man named John Williams was sentenced to life in prison for the rape of a 10-year-old boy named Raphael D'Amico. Williams had been one of the state witnesses in the Hennessey murder trial, and his sentence was ordered by Joseph Shakespeare, which further adds to the complexities of this case.
Yes, okay. Because this mayor was apparently a racist.
Oh, I very much agree with that.
And probably was harboring a love of the old Confederacy on top of that.
You're probably right, especially considering that he was one of the ones that tried to incite violence and supported the mob. So that is pretty much the story of David Hennessey's death and the aftermath that came with it. And once again, a part of New Orleans history that, when I look at something like this, I'm glad that we're mostly past treating certain people like this, but we're not done yet.
No, at the time it's obvious that much of the public sentiment that that endorsed these lynchings was a hatred of Italian immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
It stemmed from that, and this assumption that all these Italian immigrants were nothing but organized crime, criminals, members of organized crime, Italian mafia assassins coming in on every boat.
Right.
That type of mentality, or the erroneous and horrific belief that the ones lynched, even if they weren't guilty, they were guilty of something. They were guilty of being Italian,
right?
Or Sicilian. That kind of mentality.
Right, and also I feel like it's important to talk about these things throughout history because I'm just trying to show everybody that there's been moral panics since forever. Like right now, the current moral panic is about transgender people. Well, back in from this story that we told today, the moral panic was Italian people. My point is that if you keep letting those in charge divide us by saying it was this group of people or it was that group of people, this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, whatever group of people that
is most convenient.
That is most convenient to blame. Okay. To blame for whatever shortcomings and failures of that public official to do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
All part of the blame game. Okay. Don't take accountability for your failures, Your Honor, Mr. Mayor. Just find somebody to blame. Find a group of people to pin your failures on.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna pin my failures on the cloud people.
The cloud people?
The cloud people.
Are those people were supposed to store your photographs and everything and videos?
No.
The contacts on your list, if you lose your phone, the contacts on your list?
No, these are people that live in the clouds.
Oh.
People
who live in the clouds.
They live in the clouds. Like when you look up at the clouds and they look like different shapes?
You know something? I think you're right. I think you're right because it's like anything I can't stand. It's a bunch of freaking peeping toms in the sky.
Oh.
If they ever catch any of those cloud people, I mean, we should take the law into our own hands. Yeah.
Yeah, we set the clouds on fire.
We set the clouds on fire. We throw Molotov cocktails at the clouds.
Flamethrowers.
They probably won't reach that high.
Aw.
Yeah.
Well, what if
you're gonna watch the wind too?
Well, what if you do something awesome, like you go up in a helicopter and you stand in the door of the helicopter with a flamethrower? Can you do that?
You set the helicopter on fire.
Probably.
Oh, yes. You probably set the helicopter on fire. It's like let's see, White House. What was the name of that? White House Down.
I think so.
The movie where you have.
I didn't actually see it.
It was that actor. I saw half the movie and I turned it off. It was on television.
That good, huh?
Yeah. You see, it was the actor, famous actor from 300.
Oh, Gerard Butler?
Yeah, Gerard Butler in those movies. And he fires a light anti-tank rocket, or LAW for short, from the interior of a presidential limousine.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, good God. I mean, that's one way to set the vehicle on fire.
I was going to say, because isn't there actual fire that comes out of the...
There is a backblast,
yeah,
because you're launching a rocket. Okay, so you're going to set the vehicle on fire. That backblast is going to set everything flammable on fire in the vehicle and blow it up. Just like in Rambo 2, Rambo shoots that RPG from the interior of a helicopter. It's like, no, you're not going to do that. No, you're not going to set the interior of the helicopter on fire with the backblast. Forget it.
Are you saying that Sylvester Stallone lied to me?
No, Rambo lied to you.
Rambo lied to me. I can't believe it.
The writer and the director lied to you.
But Sylvester Stallone perpetuated the lie. Sylvester Stallone is a cloud person.
Yeah. Yeah. No wonder he was in the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Did he set things on fire in that movie?
He actually didn't. No.
Okay.
But he was making sure our heroes had what they needed to set things on fire in that movie, I suppose.
All right, dear listeners. We are approaching August. And with August come, a new month. And we are going to do another deep dive series for the entire month of August where we talk about the something that I've wanted to actually discuss on this podcast for a while, the infamous Derek Todd Lee, the Baton Rouge serial killer.
Ah.
Yes.
Yes. And there's a little bit of vigilante justice associated with that one?
No.
Or do I have the wrong case there?
You have the wrong case.
Oops. Oopsie.
But, spoiler alert, he is already dead. He's already died in prison, so he is no longer on this earth. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, good for him. Died in prison.
Good for him, died in prison.
Got what he deserved. Someone like that just, is proven in court that person cannot be in society with everybody else because they can't live and let live, can they?
No, but we will talk about all that over our upcoming 3 episodes about it. So, everybody get ready for that. We are going to be back next week with one of those episodes. Until then, be safe, be kind. Remember that we're all human beings. Don't park next to vans and stay hydrated because it's really hot out there.
Yes, I had a scare a couple weeks ago.
You did have a scare a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, and on the way I was starting to feel dizzy, and
you weren't even doing much.
I was out. It was me running errands between the hours of 2 to 6 o'clock, and your hottest part of the day. And at one point, for the first time in my life, I was taking my drinking water and pouring it on top of my head after drinking some. And then making my way home and running into the kitchen and putting my head over the faucet for 2 solid minutes.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, that's how hot I got it, because I was starting to feel dizzy and starting to feel the first symptoms
and also
of heat exhaustion.
How it doesn't always have to take much. It does not, it can come pretty quickly. So yeah, everybody stay hydrated, stay in the shade, stay in the AC if you can.
Yeah, if you start to feel first symptoms of heat exhaustion, which is dizziness is the biggest symptom. Dunk your head in water, pour water on your head, get cool, get into, get out of the heat immediately, because what comes next is going to be catastrophic for you. But if it's dark, it's dangerous, you don't feel safe, and if it's too hot, don't be there in the first place. Okay, let someone else take the heat for once. And if you are being questioned by law enforcement and you are not the victim or the witness to a crime, lawyer up and drink your water.